Hello and welcome to Fantasy Premier League, the DNG. I'm back today for what is a very relevant video, wildcard draft for game week 17. Now, we are getting very close to when the second wildcard of the season will be able to be played in game week 19. From then on, you can have access to your second one. And if you are someone that has just been stinking it up because you played your first wildcard in like game weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, then this is something you need to be keeping in mind. These are my thoughts ahead of what is likely to be a very important second wild card of the season, particularly for some people that have been like just treading water because of the fact that they played it so early on in the season. And look, if you're one of those people that still haven't played it, this is also super relevant because you can set your team up perfectly for the fixtures that are going to be coming up in the foreseeable future. So without further ado, let's get into what I think ahead of producing a game week 17 wildcard draft. So we have a lot of things to get through, and that to start with is the fixtures. Now, how important are the fixture runs really? I am not 100% sure how good they actually are. So the last few weeks have seen people, including me, sell Brian Mbeumo, and he has returned with 13 and 10 points the last 2 weeks in fixtures that we probably thought he wasn't going to get much in at all. And we had Bruno Fernandes. I have kept him. He's stayed in my team. But for other people, they have got rid of him over the last 2 weeks. And he has got 9 points and 9 points. Arguably much better than what people have moved him for. So realistically, should you be moving him on? I'm not 100% sure that you should be. So look, that also comes into effect with the Tottenham and Man City fixtures. Now, they do look really good on paper going forward for both of these teams. However, the teams are absolute rubbish. Like, we just seen Man City implode at home yet again. They've now won 1 game in 11 games of football. Like, that is the form of like a relegation type team. Pep is scratching his head. He's leaving cuts on his head. He's lost the complete plot at the moment. So is that somewhere you really want to be going? I'm not 100% sure it is. And look, when Ahmad and Bruno Fernandes are scoring and it's 115 seconds apart, you might as well just accept your lot in life that you're going back to the championship. We'll see you in a couple of years. In regards to Tottenham, Ange Ball is unpredictable ball. Yes, they beat Southampton, who are a championship side 5-0. They potentially might win this week, but then they're likely to lose against the rubbish team the following week after. They are just too unpredictable to back them in as decent assets. With that all being said, you also have to be aware of Brighton. Now, Brighton, since game week 12, on paper, looked like they had the best run of fixtures going forward. They haven't won in the last 4 weeks. They've lost twice to teams that you're like, really? And then they've drawn twice with teams that you're like, they should have beaten them. Like Southampton, how are you not beating them at home? I've got absolutely no clues at all. So look, Brighton have been very disappointing, and that will come into my line of thinking in regards to that. But with that being said, you do still have to be aware of Brighton's run of fixtures. Arsenal's, Chelsea's, Bournemouth's, West Ham's, Liverpool's, Fulham's, Man United, they're all got really good fixture runs ongoing from game week 17. And I think that that's where you need to be looking ahead with your teams, with your selection, and planning ahead. Because obviously we've got the assistant manager chip as well. That is something that you do need to keep in the back of your mind, because if you don't, you're going to not have the funds for it. And I just think that that's something that you do need to be aware of moving forward, particularly when it does become available in game week 24. So, and also, is it time to spend up bigger on the forward line? Now, I spent up for Isaac and Jackson in game week 12, and it has been an absolute masterstroke because I haven't had to be wasting transfers on him, and I didn't transfer Isaac out when he was injured. I just thought, well, I was already going to bench him in the Liverpool game anyway. And thankfully, Jackson didn't play, and he came on for my field, and I got 11 points. Absolutely brilliant luck, but sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. That is FPL we're talking about. But I think we have seen that having both of them is probably the play moving forward because of the fact that the lower priced options have been they've just gone off the boil the last few weeks, right? So Raul Jimenez, I think, has got 1 return in like 3 or 4 games. Chris Wood's got 2 and 4. Valenson hasn't returned in the last 3 weeks. João Pedro hasn't returned in the last 3 weeks. Cunha hadn't returned until obviously the game on the weekend, but now he looks like he's going to be suspended. Strand Larson, ditto. All these cheaper options have been massively underwhelming the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I think that is showing that, if you can afford to do it, it is better to spend your money in the attack. And as we've seen on the weekend, lots of people picked spending money on the defense and bringing in like a Van Dijk, a Trent, a Gabriel, a Saliba, instead of bringing in an Isaac or a Jackson. Well, you'd have to say on the whole, you would have been better off spending the money in the forward line. And the fact that clean sheets in general have been so few and far to find this year, I actually think that it makes no sense to continue to back in defenders when you could be just spending that money in your forward line and backing in the forwards to score. I mean, in the last 2 weeks alone, there's been obviously 40 teams. No, sorry, that's a lie. There was 18 and 20 because obviously the Liverpool-Everton game got called off. But in the 38 teams that have played the last 2 weeks, there's been 5 clean sheets out of 38 teams. The numbers just aren't there. And across the season at the moment, we're seeing more teams score than keep clean sheets. And that's even with the big teams. We've seen Arsenal concede goals from like less than 0.1 XG. Like, I just don't think it's worth spending up on them. That's just my personal opinion. And you will see from my team that I don't really rate spending money on the defense. Now, again, drafts do come down to personal preference and your team value. So I have a team value of 105.7. I'll show you. So that means I can afford different teams compared to someone that, say, would have like a team value of 103. That's an extra 2.7 I've got to play with. Whereas if you do have less, it is harder. So I'll try and provide some different alternatives to different players within this thing. Now, and then the last thing, the midfielder draft. The 3 premium midfielder draft. Is that the way forward? I'm not 100% certain, but I've got a draft here without Saka in it, FYI. But I think potentially still speaking, he probably is the pick moving forward. So without further ado, if you are new, smash the subscribe button, like the video, and let's dive into what the fixture difficulty rating is telling us and look at the wildcard drafts for the next couple of weeks. All right, so as you can see here, the Arsenal fixture run is amazing. Other than the Tottenham game in game week 21, it is looking really good. Aston Villa, they're hit and miss. They also aren't playing that well. Bournemouth, as I said, the next 4 weeks look really good. Other than Man United this week, I wouldn't be playing their defensive assets against them, but it looks pretty good still for the next 4 weeks. Brentford, it's hard to recommend, but Brian Mbeumo just continues to defy the odds, so I think he's still a valuable pick there that you could go with. Brighton, again, the fixtures are there. Like, they're there pretty much through to the end of the season. They've just got their one odd game here and there that you don't really want to play them, but they're just not playing very well. I actually think that West Ham are definitely big favourites to win this weekend, and I'm going to the Brighton and West Ham game at the London Stadium, and I'm expecting to see. I'm concerned that I've got 3 Brighton players on my team, and that was likely to change before the deadline. Chelsea, obviously, the sea of green is still there. They are amazing. I think they're definitely worth tripling up on at this particular point in time. It's just a matter of whether you go the defender and Palmer and Jackson, or if you go Enzo and Palmer and Jackson. It's really up to you. Crystal Palace, I'm jumping on one of their assets this week, even though he is suspended, in Munoz. He looks really good. And I was like, in most teams, you could easily sit him on the bench this week if you're wildcarding, and then he looks amazing from then on in. Crystal Palace are starting to look really good as well. They're looking like the team that I was expecting them to be at the start of the season. Yeah, we'll get into them a little bit. Everton, the run of fixtures is hard, but like, they have been playing really well defensively, and maybe they'll get a few clean sheets in here. But I wouldn't be backing in any of their attacking assets at all. But their defensive assets look not too bad. In terms of, sorry, that was my alarm going off, telling me hurry up and get on with it. Fulham, as I said, look amazing. Southampton straight up at home as well. Like, they're the championship team. They're going back to the championship, but yeah, we'll get on to them a little bit. Ipswich, obviously, you're not going there. Leicester, ditto. Liverpool, other than Tottenham this week, this is pretty much green run from then on in. Man City, yes, they're just in such a funk. It's so hard to recommend any of their assets. I just don't think they're worth it at the moment. Maybe one of their cheaper midfielders will start popping off like a Doku, but I can't put him in this week. There's just no form there to base any of their selections on. Man United, they look amazing. Other than the Liverpool game in Game Week 20, ditto Newcastle with Tottenham in 20, but from an attacking perspective, both of those teams look really good moving forward for the next foreseeable future. Nottingham Forest look much better from an attacking perspective and defensive perspective post the next 2 weeks. So, like, you could go back there. Southampton, as I said, you really want to take a risk, really want to take a bargain, look for some rank, then back in their cheap assets. But that's a championship team in the Premier League, and they're going to go back to the championship in a few weeks at the end of the season. There's no way they're staying up. So I don't even know why they sacked their manager. Spurs, Ange Ball, unpredictable ball. They'll probably win this week against Liverpool, and then they'll probably lose the next 2. So you get what you get with Tottenham. They're just too hard to recommend. They're too hard to read as a football team. They're very Spursy. West Ham, they look all right for the next 2. then a hard 2, then another good 2, and then Wolves, yeah, the less said about them, the better. All right, so moving into my team from game week 12. Now, this is the wildcard draft I had in game week 12, and I still think it's really relevant. I actually think the forward 7 I should have just left, like Brian and Burmo in the next. Like, I obviously got rid of Brian and Burmo for Matoma and Van Heck, who's sitting on my defense for Timber. Now, Timber pick's been really good, but Timber has actually been outscored by Brian and Burmo in the time that I've had him in my team, even though Timber had that 14. It's mad. So I actually think that this is why I'm saying I don't think it's worth spending up in the defense when the forward positions can be doing so well. And look, that was my game week 12 wildcard draft, and the template has not changed too much since then. Now, if I look at my team for this week, I've obviously got rid of Nori and I've got Robinson in, and that's what I'm looking at. And like, there isn't too much I don't like about my team. The only player in the forward positions that I really care about is Matoma. I just don't really like them. Brian just aren't playing well. I don't mind João Pedro because, like, whoever that is, I'm not really planning on playing them any weeks at all. Unless Nicholas Jackson gets suspended in the next 2 weeks, they're never going to come onto the field. They're always going to be the first position on my bench. And then obviously I'm just rotating the defenders. Like in this week, it's Fabianski versus Verbruggen. I don't know who's better. Let me know in the comments. But at the moment, I'm going with that. Now, with that being said, I just want to show you what my team value is, so you can see that I am doing this from a position of, quite a luxury position. So 105.7 mil is quite a lot of money in team value that can spread around. So with that being said, let's have a look at the first wildcard draft I've come up with. So this one here is the one without Saka, and this is where I think that potentially moving forward, I'm not sure if Saka's worth the money, but I'm not sure if it's worth spending the extra money in defense. So this draft is the defender draft where I've spent money in the defense. All right. So I've got Alisson Becker in goal. This is with some forward planning. Like Liverpool are going to have that double game week, and it's either going to be Bournemouth, Everton, or it's going to be Wolves and Everton in either 24 or 25. Hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's likely that it's going to be there depending on a mitigation of different things. But it's something to keep in mind. And that's why Alisson Becker makes 2 of these 3 drafts because of that particular double game week. And I do want 3 Liverpool players. I just don't know who I want the third one to be. It's highly unlikely that it's going to be a defender other than Kanate. It's more likely that it will be a Diego Jota. So like Anthony Gordon in this draft here could become Diego Jota. They cost exactly the same amount. It's a very easy swap. So that's probably where I'll be lining my line of thinking will be going in regards to that. And that obviously depends on fitness because Diego Jota does like getting himself injured. But I think that particular thing is something that I'll go. So let's talk through the team. Alisson, as I said, is covering the Liverpool defence. And I do think moving forward, that is something I want to do. It's the reason why he makes 2 of the 3 drafts. Then you're covering the Liverpool and Arsenal defence with the cheaper options that are available to you. And that's why I like Gabriel, as I said. And look, I talked about, like, I'll get into the second version of this when I talk about why I'm just ignoring Trent and like the higher price defenders in general, because I just don't think they're worth the extra money over like the 4.5s. And that is because like lots of people forget that Trent Alexander-Arnold this season has 3 assists, no goals in 16 game weeks. That is not good numbers. People say, oh, he's like having an extra midfielder in your defense. No, he's not. He has not been producing the old Trent Alexander-Arnold. People seem to think that he's playing like he's playing from like 2-3 seasons ago. He's not. So just keep that in mind. I actually don't think he's worth the money. I'm surprised. So I had him at the start of the season and I was nowhere near tempted since he's been back in fitness to bring him back in. But I just don't see the upside there for me at all. So Anthony Gordon, he does make this draft. And Anthony Robinson, I just want to talk about Anthony Robinson. So like Fulham's run of fixtures does look amazing. I had him at the start of the season. I moved him on in my wildcard in game week 12. Realistically, I probably should have just kept him. And I did think about keeping him because originally he only just became Colwell and I saved 1. And I've obviously brought him back in. Actually paid 0.1 extra because I sold him for 4.6. So, I did have to pay to bring him back, but he's definitely worth it. 8 Nori, he only cost me 0.1 from 8 Nori to get back in, so it wasn't too bad. But the run of fixtures for Fulham does look amazing moving forward, and it's really lovely. Now, Munoz as well, he is obviously suspended for the Arsenal game, and he was never going to play anyway. But if you're wildcarding, you're not playing him for this week. You're bringing him for the weeks that follow. And you tell me if it's not worth jumping a week early just to try and make sure you don't cop that price rise. he looks pretty damn good. Looks pretty damn juicy from next week onwards. And his positions he's been taken up do look really good as well. Now, in this particular draft here, you've obviously got Ahmad facilitating all this with his ability to be an enabler. Like 5.2 mil, the dude has been amazing. He's up to 11% ownership now, and he's highly likely to come into my team for Matoma before the deadline and probably before he rises in price. If it looks like he's going to rise in price, I'm probably just going to jump on board. He does look really good. His attacking potential is there. We've seen now being deployed in the number 10 position in the last 2 games by Ruben Amorim, and that means that he's a lot more delightful asset. I mean, the dude, every time he gets a ball, looks like something's going to happen. And for me, it is Ahmad over Enzo Fernandez. I just think that long term, Ahmad is going to offer you more than Enzo. Because of the fact that I think Ahmad's going to be a nailed-on option in the United team. I'm still not convinced by Enzo in the Chelsea team. Yes, he has been chugging along very nicely the last 6 weeks. Will he keep that going? I'm not 100% sure. He reminds me of like a Gundogan in Man City the first time round. Have that purple patch and then just go missing for like 5 or 6 weeks. I don't think Ahmad's likely to do that. Now, Anthony Gordon comes in here, and I do have 0.7 million left in the bank in this particular draft. But Anthony Gordon comes in because of the fact that I quite like him, but he could easily be Brian Mbeumo. So again, or you could drop him down. If you haven't got the team value, there's lots of 6 million rated midfielders that are looking pretty good. Kulusevski from Tottenham does look pretty good. Also, Eze is an option to keep in mind after this week at 6.6. That'll save you an extra 0.6. Or he could be an Enzo Fernandez and allow you that extra 2 million that you might need in your team value. So like, there's nothing wrong with that. I've obviously left room for that particular eventuality in this draft, but I really like Anthony Gordon. Newcastle's run of fixtures is really good. And he's got 0.38 expected goals, 0.2 expected assists. That's pretty damn good from an attacker. And the run of fixtures is looking pretty damn good from an attacking perspective, all the way through to probably the Liverpool game in game week 27. And then following that, it's still really good again. So I really like Anthony Gordon as an option, as a long-term option as well. And I think he just dovetails quite nicely with Isaac. If they're both fit and available, Newcastle is such a much better team. So for me, that's really good. Now, obviously, I've got Nicholas Jackson and Isaac. They make every single draft. They are the 2 best attackers in the game at the moment for the price that you pay for them. And they both have amazing run of fixtures coming up. Chelsea do have that sea of green as well that you do need to be aware of. And Chris Wood comes in for João Pedro. He's a much better pick. His expected goals are really good, 0.45, and he has been outperforming his XG. And obviously, he has come through that harder run of fixtures with, he blanked in 2 of the last 3 weeks, but he did score against Man United. And he's been unlucky against Man City and Aston Villa not to score there as well. And yeah, obviously, the run of fixtures does become much nicer for Nottingham Forest moving forward, and he is in the form of his life. So between now and game week 26, I think that we're likely to see Chris Wood do pretty well. I'm not sure about the Liverpool game in game week 21. You probably bench him for that week, but all the other weeks look really good moving forward. So that's my first one. That's a little bit different. That's about Saka. That's about the template 3-man premium midfield draft, but that is spending the money on the defense. Now, if you think that not spending money on the defense is the way to go, then pay attention to this one, because this is what I think these next 2 are what I'd probably go with. If this was game week 12, I'd 100% be going with this lineup right here. I'd be sticking with the 5-man premium midfield, which is what I did in game week 12, and have Nicholas Jackson and Isaac. Now, the only difference to the forward 8 from my game week 12 wildcard draft is the fact that Raul Jimenez comes in, because that's the only way I can afford the other 7 players at the moment with the squad value that I've got, and obviously bringing in Munoz, and who I really like in the defense. So obviously Raul Jimenez is João Pedro, and I think realistically moving forward, Fulham's run of fixtures is probably nicer than Brighton's anyway. So Raul Jimenez may actually end up outscoring João Pedro over the next 6 or 7 weeks, provided he keeps his place in the team, which you would think that he has been pretty good of late. So yeah, I don't mind him at all. Now, everyone goes, well, you're not spending money on your defense. Now, I just want to point out, so Trent Alexander-Arnold, I talked about it earlier, has 3 assists in 16 weeks, no goals. So if we have a look at Lewis Hall here, and we go down, he's 4.6 million, and he's had 3 assists in 16 weeks. He's had the exact same amount of assists as Trent Alexander-Arnold. It cost you 2.4 million less. All right, mine I've had the same amount of clean sheets. That's true, but he still had 3 attacking returns. If we have a look at Robinson here from Fulham, he's had 3 Hold on. 3, 4, 5, 6. He's had 6 assists. He's had double the amount of assists than Trent Alexander-Arnold. What's his price? 4.8 million. Fulham have also kept a fair amount of clean sheets as well. 55 points. Colwell, he's the boring defender. I'm not going to go into him. Kirkes, though, over here, he's 4.7 million, 1 goal, 2 assists. Same amount of attacking returns as Trent Alexander-Arnold. 2.3 million less. He's got 50 points for the season. Then we go to Munoz, 4.7, 51 points for the season. He's had 2 goals and 2 assists. He's had more attacking returns than Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. So everyone says there, and I'm just going to pull up Trent Alexander-Arnold just so we can see what I'm talking about here. Alexander-Arnold. So if you have a look at him, he's obviously scored 62 points for the season. So he scored 10 more points across the season than that lot. You tell me if the 10 points is worth an extra 2.3 million. Because I don't think it is. And the only reason why he's got that is because Liverpool's defensive run has been so good that he's picked up a lot of clean sheets. But if you look back, three assists across that time, that is not midfield stats, I'm afraid. And I don't think he is worth the money at all. So, which is why I'm not even tempted by him. So look, in this one here, I actually think that we talked about it before. Like Brian Mbeumo, if I hadn't moved him to Matoma, who's got 6 points since he's been in my team, whereas Brian Mbeumo's got 25, that hurts. But obviously, I got rid of Van Heck, who in that same period of time has got like 4 points or whatever, and I got Enduring Timber, who got 22. I still am worse off in that trade, even though Timber's been amazing. Brian Mbeumo's been just as good. So, and you can see there, that's me skimping out on the defense. I actually think that is the correct play. I think there's more points to be had on that forward 7. Every week they are going to be. That's what's propelled me into the top 21,000. And like, look, part of me is like, going, do I just ditch Timber back to a Munoz and then bring a Henderson in goal, and then Brian Mbeumo comes back in for Matoma? That is definitely something I could do. If I roll my 2 transfers this week, I can actually do that next week. Like, no problem at all. I'll be able to afford it. So like in my mind, I'm like going, is this the draft? So this is the second one. And I'm super tempted by this one. And if it was game week 12, this is 100% what I'd be going with. And yes, I'm not covering the Arsenal defense. Yes, I'm not covering the Liverpool defense. Do you need to? I'm not sure you do. I think it's all about those attacking players. And that's how I made my points this season. And I think that with the lack of clean sheets this season, that is the play moving forward. Now, this is the third draft. And again, this is the one that I probably will go with because of the fact that I have 2 free transfers, right? I can bring in Ahmad this week for Matoma, which I really like the look of. That gives me then 1.3 million into the bank. And then I obviously can bring in Alisson Becker for Bruggen next week. I'm not going to bring him in for the Tottenham game because I think Tottenham potentially will score. And then obviously I can bring in Munoz next week as well. So I may only actually make the 1 transfer this week, and this might just be Ahmad in for Matoma. And then the next week, I'll actually move to this draft, like with Munoz and Becker coming in for Colwell and for Bruggen. And I'll actually have this draft in game week 18. So look, I really like this one because of the fact that you are forward planning with that Liverpool double game week coming up. And I think it is important to try and get 3 Liverpool players for that double game week. And Alisson Becker is a lock in goal. And at 5.4, yes, he's expensive because he's a goalkeeper, but like realistically, if I want 3 players for that team, I'm not going to be spending up for a Van Dijk, a Trent, anything like that. So then it's just in the midfield. So like Diego Jota, if he's fit and available, that's definitely where I would go. But yeah, I mean, like João Pedro as well, he's concerning. I've obviously got 0.2 left in the bank here. And there's no, ideally, I'd like to get João Pedro up to someone, but I'm like, it's either Dean Henderson and Chris Wood instead of João Pedro. But I think at the moment João Pedro just sits there because I'll be quite happy just rotating him and Ahmad week to week depending on the fixture. So I don't mind that. But as I said, I really like that one before where I've still got Brian Mbeumo in there. It just looks so good, like playing that front 7 every week. You just set and forget, and then your only decision really comes down to who's going to start in the defense. So yeah, obviously I got it wrong on the weekend. I played 8-Nori over Lewis Hall, but I crunched the numbers, and the numbers told me that Lewis Hall was not going to score 15 points and 8-Nori was not going to get me -2. So it does give you It does give you that headache every week. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you would do. If you are interested in joining the league, please see the description. The league code is in there. And then if you are interested in talking all things fantasy, join the WhatsApp chat as well. There's a bunch of blokes in there, including me, and you can ask questions directly and you'll get a response pretty quickly as well. I will be back tomorrow for a transfer tips video, and then Friday with team selection. And then on Saturday, me and Alan are going to be doing a live show together. We're not going to be doing it over like thing where he will be in the same room as me because I am in the UK. And then we're off to see the West Ham Brighton game. And then obviously on Sunday, I'm getting up stupidly early to get up to Manchester to watch my team, Man United, which is why I'm kind of keen to bring in Ahmad this week against Bournemouth at home, because the fact it'll give me a bit more impetus behind the game and get me a bit more excited. So yeah, let me know. Make sure you like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you tomorrow for transfer tips. That's been FPL Unit.